Welcome back to Impact for another week. My name is Russell Thomas, and I am honored to be joined this morning by the colorful and lively Janene Hickman from Some Other Solutions. Good morning.
Good morning.
I love your yellow scarf.
Thanks.
When folks watch this on Shaw Cable 10, they'll be able to see that. Of course, they can't see it on the radio.
No.
And I can tell them that you're very beautiful this morning.
Oh, thank you. Spring has sprung.
Ooh, it has indeed. I saw Canada geese yesterday flying north.
Excellent.
It's a good
sign.
A good day. We're here today to talk about a real. First of all, you are the support and wellness counselor with Some Other Solutions. Some people know you as SOS.
Right.
You do a lot of work, I know, in schools and with a broad variety of people in the community. But today we want to focus a little bit on the hope of starting a support group for parents who have lost children from suicide, by suicide.
Or not only parents, I guess, Russell, really it's anybody who has lost a loved one.
So it could be a friend.
Could be a friend, could be a partner, could be potentially adult children who've lost a parent, brother, sister. Yeah, so really we're not really focusing on anyone. We want it to be adults, however, that are going to come to the group, but anybody who's lost someone to suicide. And we feel that there are probably quite a few people in our community that could benefit from this.
Now, it's always been there. Have we seen an increase since coming back after the fire?
I think the biggest challenge that we've had in Fort McMurray and probably a lot of communities is the accurate reporting. So there's lots of stigma around suicide. When somebody dies with an illness, I'm so sorry you lost your father. Cancer is such a terrible disease. We don't have that same conversation with suicide. So I have a feeling that if suicide comes up in conversation, if it's lucky enough to come up, there's still some fear and some stigma. People are worried about people blaming them, or why didn't you know, why didn't you recognize it, why didn't you do something? And also there's the whole system, the privacy of information, with the RCMP responding perhaps to a death, and perhaps the health system gets involved. How that information actually filters out to the community is still a bit of a mumbo jumbo. But we certainly know that in the past year there have been an increase in suicides in Alberta. Still trying to really gather that data from Fort McMurray, and we're working with our community partners to get that information.
You use the word stigma, and we've talked a lot about mental health stigma around depression and those kind of things, but taking it a step further, assuming that there is this stigma, that it is a difficult topic to talk about, one can leap to the conclusion that if you're a parent, a sibling, a friend of somebody who has committed suicide, you're carrying a burden and it's having an impact on your life. It's hard to generalize, I'm sure, but what do those people go through? What would be a typical emotional response to losing somebody by suicide?
And I think that's what makes this group so unique. We've had a couple of peer facilitators who are going to help us with the group, and they've identified that no matter how much people try to provide support or show concern, there was always something missing. Because there's all of these ideas and myths and misconceptions about suicide, that the person is selfish. How could they have done this? Again, for a partner, how did you not know that didn't you notice they were changing? Or so there's some blame there. There's some assumed blame, that the person is done something wrong. Certainly suicide for many individuals is a sin, it's a crime, it's a terrible thing to do. So the person, not only having lost someone that they care about and grieving that death, now they have that extra kind of that feeling that this person maybe did something wrong. So the idea around the group, I guess, is bringing people that have the loss, but also are carrying some of those burdens, as you said, and there's a common kind of shared burden around the group that everybody acknowledges, right? So as somebody, I haven't lost anybody personally to suicide, so I've never had someone approach me and ask those tough questions. And I don't think those questions come about, as I said, when you just, a family member dies in an accident or with an illness or of old age, those kinds of things. We have a little more respect, I think, for people in their deaths in those ways. I think suicide still, unfortunately, has some different feelings.
What has prompted the move towards creating this support group? Was there something specific, or was it some idea that someone had come up with that said?
Yeah, we've always kind of thought about starting this at SOS. We think that there's a real value in bringing people together for that peer support, right? The SOS has a 24-hour crisis line, and we have staff that are available, But often, friendships can really develop and people bond over shared experiences, which is the power of support groups. And there are two local ladies that are in the city. They kind of connected with each other through work and recognized that they both had lost a partner to suicide. They're at different places in their journeys, but together they thought, if there's two of us, there had to be more. And knowing that SOS certainly has programs related to suicide and grief and loss, they approached us and said, can we do something? And of course, we jumped on the opportunity. And with my guests' professional experience and their personal experience together, we're just going to be the terrific trio to bring this to the community.
This may be a tough question, but I know for a fact that we have lost a number of people from overdoses of fentanyl and other drugs in recent weeks in Fort McMurray. Does that fall in the same pile? Or is that a different?
Well, we've had this discussion as well, and I actually brought that back to these two ladies because they're very open about their experiences and their journeys with suicide, and they said it's a little different. Overdose, again, carries some stigma because drug users, there's some feelings that people have about that. But suicide is a little bit different because it's intentional, right? Suicide, there's a plan, there's a thought, there's a process that most individuals go through in taking their lives. Overdose is often seen, again, as an accident and very unfortunate, where suicide is kind of planned. So I asked them, because we've had certainly some inquiries from people who've lost family members related to overdose, and they feel that the feeling is a little bit different. But I do think there's a need as well for that. So I think at SOS we're really open to opportunities like this to support the community. But I think for right now, we're really going to focus on people who've lost someone specifically to suicide.
So right now, this is a germ of an idea that's beginning to take root and sprout out of the ground, to use a good spring metaphor, because I saw tulips sprouting out of the front flower bed yesterday. Somebody's listening to this program that has lost someone close to them by suicide. What's next? What do they do to help move this support group forward? What do they do? What action can they take right now?
We're trying to keep it as simple as possible. They really just need to call Some Other Solutions, our business office, and get in touch with me or leave their name or number. We'll contact them, gather some basic information, and then we're going to get the group running. We were really hoping to start in April, but we didn't quite have enough people to really have a real good solid group. So we're willing to kind of delay it a little bit. Part of my reason in being here is hopefully somebody's listening and might have some interest and will give us a call. Our business office is 780-743-8605. My extension is 7, pretty easy. Just give me a call and we'll get them registered. And if anybody knows things about SOS, it's a pretty caring, comforting, kind of homey feel. So we really think that when people come in the doors, they're going to feel quite at ease and really take advantage of the support that we can offer.
Super dumb question. Is a support group like we see in the movies, people sit in a circle, there's a facilitator who keeps the conversation moving. Is it as simple as that to paint a picture for people?
It really is. The difference with this group is that it's going to be a closed group, and closed meaning that people actually have to register and hopefully stay involved for the 8 sessions. You can't just drop in at any point. Trust is going to be very important for this group to be able to share and kind of unload some of their stories. We don't need strangers kind of popping in. So AA, for example, you can just kind of show up and share. We really think it's important that this is a closed group, so people kind of need to register. There's no cost or anything of that nature, but just getting some commitment from them and hoping that they can stay involved throughout the duration of the 8 sessions.
Well, it sounds like a great idea and very important for us here today to share the story of what it's about and how it might help somebody who's isolated and just doesn't know how to cope or is having difficulties, just feels like they're the only person in the world going through what they're going through. So,
exactly.
Fantastic. My guest this morning is Janene Hickman, Support and Wellness Counselor with Some Other Solutions. You're listening to Impact. It's a collaboration of the United Way, Fuse Social, Shaw TV, Fort McMurray, and our friends right here at 91.1 The Bridge. Welcome back to Impact. I am Russell Thomas. My guest is Janene Hickman from Some Other Solutions, and we're talking about the dream, the goal, the aspiration of starting a support group for people who have lost loved ones, friends, relations to suicide. And I know, Janene, right now mental health is a huge topic of conversation in our community for obvious reasons. It's almost 1 year since the fire, and I know personally I've had people reach out to me from other communities who have friends, relatives in the community that are struggling with mental health right now, and presumably there could be some issues where people are at a higher risk of suicide than in the past. In your work with Some Other Solutions, which is specifically dealing with helping counsel people through tough times, what are you seeing? What are you seeing professionally in the last few months that perhaps is different than what we saw earlier?
Yeah, certainly at SOS, we have a couple of staff that are working in our grief and loss program, and their numbers are through the roof. You know, there's just not enough appointments in a day to see individuals that are coming forward. And primarily, I think people are coming forward with a loss that we can all, you know, understand related to the fire or families being displaced, those kind of losses. But again, underneath that, people have experienced a lot of stuff in their lifetime. And a lot of us, as our coping skill, we just kind of bury it, you know? It is what it is, you kind of tuck it away. But for the fire, for many people, it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And all that stuff started to surface. So certainly in speaking with some of our staff, people are coming in and sharing, you know, their recent experiences with loss and grieving some things. And then in conversation, you know, as you get a bit of a history from people, lots of things are coming up. So in many ways, this has provided people an opportunity to kind of work through some of that old stuff. In the crisis line, for sure, we're getting lots of calls, people just feeling completely overwhelmed and unsure, challenges with, you know, being displaced or living in different accommodations with the insurance companies. We've all heard the similar stories, right, of the challenges that people are going through. Specific to suicide, and I guess the reason that I'm you know, really trying to promote suicide awareness is that loss is one of the main contributors to suicide. You know, so when people are at risk and are really kind of at a place where they're feeling like things are near the end or they're feeling hopeless, losing something else is often what kind of puts them over the edge, so to speak. We use the analogy of the river in one of the courses that I teach, and that people are always in the river, but the dam kind of stops, and the dam is the good thing in life, right? So the friends, the family, the job that you know, kind of keeps you from really going down the river when it gets fast and can kind of you know, sink you. But for many people, the dam cracked, you know, when they lost their home, when they had to move away, when they lost a job, you know, when families were displaced and staying in different places, financially, the strain that came from that. Families with big homes now living in apartments, you know, all of those things. So I think the dam kind of cracked, and for me in my role with suicide prevention, that means people are in the river, and the river can be a scary place. If you think about fishing, you fish, right? You're, you know, whitewater rafting. At any moment, the current can come and can just take you downstream. Without those things that can kind of keep you safe, people are more at risk. And I think that's really relevant for our community. We use that analogy, but I think now more than ever, that's relevant for our community.
Certainly getting people talking is a good thing. And I know there's been two schools of thought. People, we've talked so much about this fire or whatever. We need to just put it aside, but we're approaching the 1 year mark, and I know there's a huge sensitivity to May 3rd, municipally with the Fire Recovery Task Force and others, knowing, and we've even had this conversation at the office, what are we doing on that day? Like, how are we going to approach that day?
Right.
Because the reality is, all of us might, it's hard to predict.
For sure.
And anybody that is in that realm of perhaps being somewhat suicidal or depressed would be certainly at risk. So are you hoping this support group to get it up off the ground and running in the next short while, or what's the timing of it?
We were really hoping to get it started for the 1st of April, again, so people could be really supported and have those you know, coping skills moving into that time that we know might be more stressful. But certainly, you know, to speak to what people are going to be feeling on that day, it's hard to predict. We can do all the research, but really it's very much an individual process. Grief is an individual process. Recovery is an individual process. So, you know, there are going to be lots of things. We hope this is just an extra something for some people. It may not relate to everybody, but I feel that suicide touches all of us in some way. I always come back to Robin Williams, you know. It kind of opened the doors for me at SOS to have a conversation that people were more comfortable with because they'd seen him in the movies, right? None of us really knew him, but we saw him in the movies. And when he took his life, it kind of opened up some doors for us to talk about how we really need to take some time to understand what suicide means, and that anybody can be impacted. We saw him as this funny, I think of Mrs. Doubtfire, right? Just hilarious. But inside he was struggling with something. And for those of us that work in the world of suicide, we recognize that can be very true, that people put on a mask. And I think for our community, a lot of people are doing their best to be okay, to be strong, and all of that language that we're using. But I wonder if people maybe aren't always doing as well as they appear to.
I said it at the time, and I'll say it again. Robin Williams had all the resources in the world. He had money, he had contacts, he had the best doctors that money could buy, but it wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. And in our own community, we have people that don't have any of those things,
right.
that they're struggling to make ends meet post-fire with the economy, mm-hmm. and we have to be mindful of one another for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always, remind people of the crisis line. It's 24 hours a day. It's free. It's a kind listening ear to chat with when you're feeling kind of overwhelmed. But also we're able to get you connected to the resources. And I think even though our community might struggle with not having everything that we need, we are definitely seeing more support services in the mental health world for people in our community now. So hopefully those will stick around for a while, because I think they're needed.
I know the crisis line number is 743-HELP.
Yes.
I always have trouble with the spelling of what's the number?
4357.
743-4357 or 743-HELP if you happen to have a phone with the letters, because that's a key
great.
thing in this day and age. Usually our phones are portable. Let me just check that. I want to look at that right now. Does it? No, it doesn't. Does it show the numbers on your phone? Okay,
yeah.
I'm segueing here to learn something live on the air. Keypad.
You're good.
Oh, there they are. Oh, see, learn something new every day. Mm-hmm. No, the crisis line is very important, and I can share personally that I had to call it in the last year because of a potential suicide situation in my own family, and mm-hmm. I didn't know where else to turn.
Right.
I honestly didn't know how to get the resources, the help that I needed in the moment, and right. So that line was there, and the volunteer I don't even remember the person's name, but it was a volunteer, and they were well trained, and they knew what to say. So that number is really, really important, and especially as we come to the anniversary date as a community, as workplaces, as school, whatever. In schools, mm-hmm. I think schools is going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of triggers that day. We have to keep the conversation going, get people open and being ready and mindful of it.
And be prepared.
Yeah.
We can expect the unexpected, but do as much as we can to be prepared.
Yeah. I shared earlier this week that there was a photo that my wife took just before her and Dylan and Ben evacuated north. I couldn't get back to my family, but they went north and I was south. And I've seen that photo 1,000 times, but I saw it for the first time last week. Mm. And do you know what I saw? I saw on the bottom of the frame a little tuft of my son's hair. And that was the emotional trigger for me. Mm-hmm. I couldn't be there to protect him.
Right. And
so people are going to have these things come up.
Totally.
So we need to be ready. Our guest this morning is Janene Hickman from Some Other Solutions, talking about a support group for people who have lost loved ones, friends, relations to suicide. It is a great initiative. We're going to talk more about it when we come back from our break. You're listening to Impact right here on 91.1 The Bridge. Welcome back to the program. We are officially in spring. I think it's spring now. I can say that. The tulips were sprouting out of the ground yesterday. We're going to soon start talking about river break. Mm-hmm. They've said sometime in the next 7 to 10 days we're likely going to see some ice moving. Yep. And exciting times, and getting closer to the 1-year anniversary of the fire. And Some Other Solutions is hard at work working with a couple of awesome facilitators to start up a new support group that can help and provide a dialogue, a safe place for people who have lost loved ones to suicide, to talk and just connect, I would imagine. And you have 2 facilitators that are pretty cool that have come forward to help with this.
Yeah, so Donna and Crystal, they're okay with me sharing their names for sure. They're community members. They work in the same place, and just, probably grabbing coffee at the same time, introducing themselves to each other. Somehow the conversation got going that both of them have lost people to suicide, specifically partners or ex-partners. Different times in their lives, Donna's kind of farther along in her journey of recovery. And they kind of talked and thought, wow, you know, two of us are in this big organization and we have this experience. And Donna was actually able to share that she comes from Ontario. And after her husband took his life, she had a very, very difficult couple of years. You know, she saw the typical counselor and the doctor and took some time off work and all of those things. But what really changed things for her was taking part in a group similar to this. So she, you know, she took part in a closed group where she was able to meet other survivors. And I think she recognized that that was really the turning point for her and really impacted her ability to move forward, you know, to accept and that her husband had taken his life, to deal with all the range of emotions that come with losing someone, but also the stigma and all that burden that comes. And she decided to kind of take it on as a side job, so to speak. So she became a facilitator, she got some training, organized lots of, you know, kind of awareness events related to suicide. And then in moving to Fort McMurray, you know, she wondered, how can I get, you know, connected here? So she runs into a coworker. They have a similar story and they tag team and came over to SOS and we had a great conversation. And for me, I think it was the missing piece. You know, I can offer that professional information. I hope that I'm caring and compassionate and all of those things, but they bring something to the group that I can't. And that's truly that they understand what it's like.
Yeah. From your training, what is the difference between one-on-one counselor sessions and what a support group could offer? What is the difference there?
I really think it's that personal, honest-to-goodness acknowledgement and the shared experience. As counselors often, you know, we try to build rapport with people and, you know, we often hear counselors say, yes, I understand. That sounds very difficult for you. That's, you know, pretty common, caring, good old-fashioned counseling. I think there's something different, though, if the person can say, I understand because I also lost my child. In counseling, we often, you know, struggle with disclosure, right? You know, we sometimes try to keep those boundaries there. But in a support group, the expectation is that everybody's going to share. And in coming to this group, everybody can look around and recognize every person sitting around that room has had somebody take their life that's been close to them. They've gone through a funeral of some kind and shared that feeling that people are probably wondering and questioning and looking at them perhaps with, you know, some judgment. There's going to be that shared experience. And I think for most of us as counselors, we don't have that to offer to our clients. So as much as we have to offer, there's a missing piece. And both Donna and Crystal shared that that was what was different for them in thinking about a support group. It's just that extra kind of layer of support and understanding that really made the difference for them.
Perhaps through the process, people will feel less alone in what they're going through.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's connection, and I think what we're probably going to see, as we do with many support groups, people are going to form some friendships. You know, relationships are going to sprout up. We recognize that people in general feel fairly isolated in Fort McMurray, right? You have to really get out there and get involved. The winters are long and cold and tough for a lot of people. People aren't always here with their families. So the opportunities for connection sometimes are a little more challenging. What better place for people who have a shared experience and a common bond? And I think what SOS brings to the table is that non-kind of clinical space. It's very comfortable. Going to a doctor's office or a counselor's office, we never know what to expect, right? We wonder if it's going to be warm and caring. If you walk into SOS, I think you get that feeling right away. So we hope that that will kind of eliminate any of the fears or worries that people have.
We're talking about a suicide survivors support group. Now, this is a topic, to be honest, that does not get talked about a lot. It doesn't show up in the mainstream media. No. It's not one of those things, well, so-and-so committed suicide. It's something that happens on the fringes. Yes. And you kind of hear little rumblings of, oh, so-and-so passed away, well, this is what the real reason was. There's tremendous level of stigma attached to suicide. And what you referenced the Robin Williams situation and the role that he played in sparking a dialogue that had been laying dormant for a long, long time. So if he left us something, it certainly was that. It continues to be that.
For sure.
And here is another way of getting the conversation going so that, you know, people don't have to be so isolated and alone in dealing with this. So again, the phone number that they can call to connect with you.
Is our main office number. It's 780-743-8605, and my extension is 7. Or even call the front desk and ask to speak to Janene. Anybody related to suicide, counseling, any of that stuff, you'll get through to me. I really just need some basic information, name, phone number, that kind of thing. We'll talk a little bit about what the person's experience is. We'll make sure that they're an adult. We think that's important as well. With youth, there's all kinds of different rules. And then we'll update them when we have a date confirmed, and hopefully we can move forward.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you know somebody, maybe it's not you, maybe it's a friend or relative that you know is in this situation, that maybe they've isolated themselves, that they're not really able to speak openly about it, take the initiative and give them a call, because they could probably benefit deeply
For sure.
from this initiative. Well, thank you to you, and thank you to Donna and Crystal, who have stepped forward to facilitate the process. It is the survivor support group of people that have lost loved ones and friends from suicide, and Janene Hickman is with Some Other Solutions. She's the support and wellness counselor there. She's really boring and not very, I'm just kidding. She loves to laugh, and you'll see her when you see this broadcast on Shaw Cable 10 next week. But don't be afraid to come up and say hello, and best of luck with the program.
Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Impact. It is a collaboration of the United Way, Fuse Social, our friends at Shaw TV Fort McMurray, who do a beautiful job making us look good, and our friends who make us sound great, 91.1 The Bridge.